What if everything you've ever been taught about money is, well, wrong? Today, we're going to dive into the huge, game-changing ideas from the very first chapter of a book that made millions of people rethink everything they knew about their finances, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it all starts with a young boy who was caught between two fathers and two completely different worlds of money. So this is the big question that really kicked off a whole financial revolution. See, when Robert Kiyosaki was just 9 years old, he was totally confused. His own dad was this brilliant academic, super smart, but was always stressed out about bills. But then his friend's dad, who didn't even finish the 8th grade, was out there building an empire. It didn't add up. Why does school prep us for a job, but not really for life? Why do we spend all this time on algebra, but learn next to nothing about how money actually works? All right, so in this explainer, we are going to crack that code. First up, we'll meet the two dads and really get a feel for their clashing worlds. Then we'll break down the poor dad playbook, the one most of us are taught. We're going to contrast that with the rich dad mindset that actually builds wealth. Then we'll get to the single most important question that separates them. And finally, we'll figure out what this huge shift in thinking can mean for you. Okay, so let's set the scene. Kiyosaki had these two major father figures in his life. And look, both were good guys, both worked really hard, and they both gave him advice. The big problem, their advice was the polar opposite, and it created this massive confusion in his head. So get this. This is the paradox that pretty much shaped Kiyosaki's entire life. On one hand, you've got his biological father, who we'll call Poor Dad. This guy was highly educated, had a PhD, and he preached that a secure job was everything. Yet he was always struggling with money. Then, on the other hand, you have his best friend's father, Rich Dad. He had very little formal education, but he understood a completely different truth. It's your assets that make you rich. And guess what? He became incredibly wealthy. Can you just imagine being a kid trying to make sense of those two realities? So let's dig into the philosophy that most of us grow up with, the one that Poor Dad represented. This is that conventional path, right? The one that sounds safe, responsible, and probably super familiar to a lot of us. And here's the formula, the script we're all handed as the ticket to a good life. It's a straight line. Go to school, get good grades, find a stable, secure job, and then just work your way up the ladder. For Poor Dad, this was it. This was the definition of success. Your paycheck, your benefits, your pension, that was your security blanket. But you have to wonder, was it real security, or was it just an illusion? And what this all boils down to is that Poor Dad put all his faith in what we call academic education. It's all about getting those degrees, those qualifications, so you can become a really valuable employee for someone else. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but as Kiyosaki found out, it's just one tiny piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. Okay, now let's flip the script and jump into Rich Dad's world, a totally different way of thinking. This wasn't about following the playbook that society gives you. It was about tearing that playbook up and writing your own. It was a mindset that challenged pretty much everything Poor Dad stood for. Rich Dad's philosophy was a total game changer. I mean, his number one rule was that you should not spend your life working for money. No. Instead, you have to learn how to make money work for you. He taught that real wealth doesn't come from a bigger paycheck. It comes from owning businesses and assets that generate income on their own. And that the best teacher isn't some professor in a classroom, it's the real world. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. Rich Dad was all about financial education. This has nothing to do with getting a degree. It's about understanding the language of money. What's an asset? What's a liability? How does cash flow? How do you invest? It's literally all the stuff you don't learn in school. Now, out of all the incredible lessons from Rich Dad, there was one that stood out as the most powerful of all. It was a really simple shift in language, a tiny change in how you respond to a challenge that completely separates these two mindsets. This is it. This is the whole thing. When he was faced with something he wanted but couldn't buy, Poor Dad's automatic response was, "I can't afford it." And that's it. Conversation over. His brain just shut down. But Rich Dad, he absolutely forbade that phrase. He insisted his son ask a different question. How can I afford it? And Rich Dad's logic here is it's brilliant. He said, one phrase stops your brain from working. The other forces your mind to find solutions. Think about that. I can't is just a statement of defeat. It's a total dead end. But how can I? Well, that's a question. That's a challenge. It kicks your brain into high gear and forces you to think, to get creative, and to actually find a way.
And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? The words you use, they don't just describe your situation, they literally create it. One mindset is a closed door, just slamming shut on opportunity. The other one, it's an open door, leading to possibilities you never would have even seen before.
So look, this isn't just some story about a kid and his two dads. It's a massive lesson in financial thinking that every single one of us can apply to our own lives. So let's break down the key things you should take away from this. So what are the big lessons here? First off, your mindset about money is your single most valuable asset. It's way more important than how big your paycheck is. Second, you can't wait for school to teach you financial literacy, because it won't. You have to go out and get that education yourself. Third, just shifting from saying I can't to asking how can I is like finding a key that unlocks a whole new world of solutions. And finally, learning about money isn't something you do once. It's a skill you have to keep working on for your entire life. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this one question to really think about. Start listening to the words you use when you talk about money. Are those words opening doors for you, or are they closing them? What is your mindset about money telling you, and is it actually leading you where you want to go?